Washington is using Africa as a testing ground for its military biological projects. That's the warning from the Russian Defense Ministry, which also lays out links between the Pentagon and Big Pharma. RT correspondent Marina Kostreva brings us the details.
It seems that America is becoming more and more creative with the ways in which it tries to retain its dominance in the world. It can no longer be achieved by regime change operations or boots on the ground alone. It's all about biological warfare now. And the focus, as of late, is on Africa.
There is a clear trend. Pathogens that fall into the Pentagon's area of interest later become pandemic, and American pharmaceutical companies become beneficiaries. Examples are infections such as yellow fever, monkeypox, and Rift Valley fever, an outbreak of which was recorded in Cairo at the site of the U.S. Navy's military biological laboratory.
It's always the same story. Washington says it's just trying to help some poor country, offering upgrades and training centers. In this case, according to Russia's biological defense forces, they target countries that have pathogens of interest, which they then use to manage the epidemiological situation to their advantage. The countries in question are either political opponents or where U.S. influence is diminishing, which is happening in many countries, apparently, since there is proof of a rapid increase in the presence of U.S. military biological labs on the African continent. In Ghana and Djibouti, they have the U.S. Naval Medical Center looking into diseases and pathogens. In Senegal, they are completing a new lab complex worth a whopping $35 million. In Zambia, the Pentagon is studying pathogens of particularly dangerous infections while seeking to increase the capabilities of military medical institutions and retaining medical personnel. Well, another $40 million went to Guinea to support their healthcare system and study Lassa fever, for which there are no means of prevention or treatment. Another interesting decision from Washington was sending 10,000 doses of a vaccine against monkeypox to South Africa, which hasn't even been approved by the World Health Organization. And they're currently working on organizing a joint study on the virus. In Kenya, the U.S. Army's Military Medical Center has deployed a network of field stations to monitor the spread of infectious diseases in the states of Equatorial Africa. In Nigeria, there are 10 specialists from the U.S. Defense Department working at the brand new medical center and military medical laboratory, which they helped establish along with the country's armed forces. They're testing antiviral drugs by a Pentagon-affiliated company, something the company did before, but in Ukraine.
The project involves the same Pentagon contractors as in the former Soviet Union, in Armenia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine. Among them are CH2M Hill, Black & Veatch, and Metabiota.
It's a case of the blind leading the blind sometimes, because while Washington insists they're there to help because they know best, it's been proven time and time again that they don't. There have been numerous reports slamming U.S. companies for safety and data quality lapses.
Documents from 2017 show that its biosafety and data quality protocols in at least 5 countries may have been inadequate. The documents further suggest a history of biosafety and data problems. A previous investigation by the Associated Press of the 2014 West African Ebola outbreak uncovered diagnostic errors, poor biosafety practices, and a lack of sample tracking. As a result, Metabiota withdrew a project coordinator who reportedly disregarded standard biosafety practices, and a WHO outbreak expert recommended shutting down a diagnostic lab, Metabiota. Eventually, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention took control of the lab.
It's been controversy after controversy, yet they keep going, calling for more biolabs, with a new bill suggesting they open 12 more, something even Elon Musk noticed and was alarmed by. Maybe because the whole thing just looks so dodgy when you take into account the track record of some of these labs. In Indonesia, for example. But don't take our word for it. Let's hear from the country's former health minister who played a crucial role in shutting down a U.S. Naval Medical Research Unit in Jakarta, citing its lack of transparency and potential misuse of virus samples.
When the bird flu hit Indonesia in 2005, we weren't able to diagnose the first case that appeared in the country. NAMRU diagnosed it. Now I was thinking, how could NAMRU know that there would be bird flu in Indonesia, which would become an epidemic? A primer is necessary for diagnosis. A primer that fits the birds affected. How come NAMRU already has one? That means NAMRU was already preparing, right? Ready for the primer before the bird flu came. I have never seen NAMRU up close. I wanted to see it, but I was turned away by the security guard. I am the Minister of Health. This land is my jurisdiction, I told him, and I never leased it to NAMRU. Why can't I go in if the land belongs to the Ministry of Health? Why is the minister not allowed to enter? It's really strange, and it turned out that to enter you had to get permission from the American ambassador. Moreover, there is no agreement that this is owned by the American ambassador. It is land owned by the Ministry of Health. When a pandemic hits, who are the ones that are making profits? It's Big Pharma. With the vaccine, then with all kinds of health supplies, the PCR tests, then the masks, and the hospital medicines. The affected countries were forced to buy them even going into debt, especially vaccines. We spent $300 trillion on COVID. Where did the $300 trillion go? To Big Pharma. If they organize, maybe saying, if there is a pandemic, I will make 1,000 trillion in profit worldwide, then I better make another pandemic, right? That's the evil of putting health in the free market or in global capitalism, yes, in liberalization. Well, the stakes are lives. If I create a pandemic and then I make a profit, I will definitely create another pandemic. Pandemics are very easy. In the past, a pandemic had to be proven by a virus mutation from animals to humans.
After her inspection of the lab in 2008, she convinced the government to shut it down for the sake of Indonesia's sovereignty and public health interests. Malaysia soon followed, questioning the professionalism and motives behind the US-funded biolab, seeking to establish control over their activities.
The concerns of the international community related to the activities of the Pentagon-funded biolaboratories are gradually increasing. The issues raised by the Russian Federation at the international venues, the 9th Review Conference of Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention member states, and the UN Security Council have revealed the reluctance of the U.S. to conduct a substantive dialogue. Russia considers it extremely important that the disclosure of the facts that reveal the illegal military and biological activities have caused various countries to consider possible consequences of their biosafety cooperation with the U.S. and take a fresh look at the necessity and rationale of this kind of cooperation.
Russian officials have been sounding the alarm over America's biolabs for quite some time now, especially when they appeared in Ukraine. The issue was even raised at the UN, though nothing much came out of it.
The Ukrainian authorities gave the Pentagon a carte blanche on Ukrainian territory and allowed it to conduct dangerous bioexperiments there on its own. The American contractor was exempted from all kinds of taxes under Ukrainian law. Studies on the transmission of diseases to humans through bats in Ukrainian biolaboratories were of a systematic nature and have been conducted since at least 2009 under the direct supervision of specialists from the US.
All fake news, according to the West, even though they later let slip and had to do some serious damage control.
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian troops, Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
But they had nothing to do with those labs, they insisted, and anyone who said otherwise was a conspiracy theorist, including Americans.
Why would we have biolabs in Ukraine?
We have biolabs in Ukraine because we're developing bioweapons, and and those bioweapons are using all kinds of new synthetic biology and CRISPR technology and genetic engineering techniques that were not available to previous generations, and they can make frightening stuff.
And it didn't start with Ukraine. In fact, there are similar labs mentioned earlier in Georgia and Armenia, with future plans to revive and use Soviet labs in Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan.
The main indicator that I believe is dangerous today, not only for you and me, but for the whole world, is that the United States of America is building or adapting biological laboratories all over the planet to meet not peaceful, but military tasks. The Pentagon has created more than 400 such labs. The main indicator that I believe is dangerous today, not only for you and me, but for the whole world, is that the United States of America is building or adapting biological laboratories all over the planet to meet not peaceful, but military tasks. The Pentagon has created more than 400 such labs.
It's the lack of transparency that is troubling when it comes to these U.S.-funded biolabs around the world. Add to that all the reports of malpractice, and you find yourself wondering why the U.S. is teaching others how to do something it clearly hasn't mastered. What's the motive here? A question more and more countries are now raising, especially Russia, which believes Washington's plan is to force countries to give up their national sovereignty in the field of biosafety to become completely dependent on them. And Moscow is warning others to watch out before it's too late.